We turn now to a shocking honeymoon death. 7 years ago, a young bride died while scuba diving in Australia with her husband. Gabe Watson did time in prison there, and yesterday he was extradited back to the U.S., where he is now facing a murder charge. Before we speak exclusively with Watson's attorney, CBS News correspondent Seth Doane has the story.
This chilling photograph taken by a fellow American honeymooner captured a lifeless Tina Watson, her arms raised toward the surface, lying helpless on the ocean floor.
Tell the camera bye.
Bye, camera.
Blow the camera a kissy.
Seen here packing for that fatal trip to Australia in 2003, 26-year-old Tina had only been married for 11 days when police allege her husband, Gabe Watson, killed her while on their honeymoon to cash in on a small insurance policy. Australian police demonstrate how they believe Tina was killed. They say Watson cut off Tina's air supply while giving her a bear hug. Then he watched her sink to the ocean floor. Watson, a certified rescue diver, told 16 different versions of what happened during interrogation.
The fight against the current is what allowed whatever thing took place that caused her to either black out.
In 2009, an Australian court convicted him of manslaughter, and he served an 18-month sentence. It's a punishment Tina's family says is not harsh enough.
Until he actually faces the evidence for the first time in a criminal trial before a jury, there can be no rest or no peace for anyone in our family.
On Thursday, Australian authorities returned Watson to the U.S. under an agreement that prosecutors here would not seek the death penalty.
Their theory is because the plot, the scheme to hatch the murder took place in Alabama, he should also stand trial for that in Alabama in a way that he did not stand trial in Australia.
Seth Doane, CBS News, New York.
Joining us now exclusively from Birmingham, Alabama, is Gabe Watson's attorney, Joseph Baskier. Mr. Baskier, good morning.
Good morning, Maggie. I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving yesterday.
I did. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you, Alabama authorities believe they have jurisdiction here, even though this alleged crime took place in Australia, because your client probably hatched the idea in Alabama. How do you respond to that?
Well, there are a number of issues in this case that will need to be handled pre-trial. That is one of them. We dispute that. We have serious concerns about Gabe's constitutional rights being violated in this situation. I haven't seen anything in the evidence that would warrant that allegation.
Why did he plead guilty then to manslaughter in Australia? Why did he just not plead not guilty?
Maggie, that's a good question. And I want the viewing public to understand that what Gabe pled guilty to was an obscure Australian law, which they are calling manslaughter, but it reads almost like a violation of the Good Samaritan law. He didn't do enough to save Tina's life. The closest crime we have here in Alabama is what's called negligent homicide, which is actually a misdemeanor. When you have a client facing the possibility of life in prison on a murder charge versus a misdemeanor with limited prison time, often you have to weigh the risks and rewards and go with the lower plea.
Well, then that raises the question, why didn't he do enough to save his wife's life? He's a certified rescue diver.
Well, he took a class 2 years before this dive. It was a half-day class and got certified that way. He had never participated in a rescue dive before. He wasn't an expert rescuer. He'd never done it. And he was scared too. This was his new wife.
The Attorney General in Alabama says that there's no international standard on double jeopardy that would prevent him for trying your client on the death again in Alabama. Do you intend to argue otherwise?
We will. We will certainly argue that this is double jeopardy. We will certainly argue that his rights to due process are being violated. There are a lot of constitutional concerns in this case.
How will he plead in Alabama if it comes to that?
He will plead not guilty.
Are you concerned about the kind of trial that he might receive? Because the Attorney General and the victim's family have been so vocal about this case against your client.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Maggie. In Alabama, there's almost a code of silence amongst the prosecutorial group in Alabama. It's very unusual to see prosecutors speaking this openly and freely in the media. when you see that kind of exposure on their part, it calls into question what their actual motives are behind this whole thing. That certainly has had an impact on the public in Alabama, and we're concerned about that. And a lot of things that we've heard in the media are untrue.
Joseph Baskier, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Maggie.